Napa. Is visiting Napa all it's made up to be? Coming up. All right, so first off, we're looking a little rough this morning. At least I am, anyway. We were out pretty late last night.
We had a nice evening, but
we were
a little rough.
Yeah, we were at a benefit for Habitat for Humanity.
Great cause.
Great cause. Great dinner last night and fun time. We donated a champagne toast with some of the champagne that we import, some grower champagne, and it raised $1,300 for that.
It was
that
always
champagne
fun to
toast.
see the auction get up there, and it was great. And they loved it, the winners, because they enjoyed it right there at the table.
Came and told, yep, they downed those bottles immediately. so good times.
But okay, it was
Good
great
times were had by all.
Yes.
Not such good times this morning, but in any event,
Topic in hand.
Topic in hand, because we have been off the air now for a couple of weeks, and not because we're lazy, but we've been on a wine vacation.
Okay, lazy, but we were enjoying a wine vacation.
We were, and this is one of those, once in a lifetime you go and do it, and very special. We visited Napa, California. We went out and spent 10 days touring Napa and drinking a lot of wine.
Now, everyone knows Napa is the place in the U.S. that people just rave about, and there are many people who only want Napa. They are very exclusive about it. So we needed to go see personally and kind of put it to the test for us.
Right, and so a little bit of a description of Napa in case you're not familiar with it. Of course, you can look it up on a map, but there is, in Northern California, there are a lot of wine regions, obviously. Sonoma, Napa, Russian River, others. There's a lot of Monterey. Napa sits in a very unique spot. There are these two mountain ranges that form a valley, and across the valley floor is some very, very interesting soils because of the geologic history there and the rivers that run through it. And then also because of the climate. The climate is very different in different parts of the valley. So you have, up at the northern end, you have Calistoga.
Right, and with these mountain ridges, there's the valley floor, and there's also up along these mountain ridges. There's so many different AVAs within that because, like he's explaining, the difference in the soils and the climates just from the two mountain ranges. So you've got the Macamas and the Vaqueras.
Right, and you have some of the vineyards are above the fog line, some of them below the fog line. Some of them get sun in the morning, some of them get sun in the afternoon.
For a relatively small area, the variations there are truly unique and fascinating.
So it's a relatively small place for California, but and a relatively small portion of California wine. But
Absolutely.
Some of the most sought after California wines. And of course there's the whole history there with the Judgment of Paris.
Yes, this is when California got to make its stand out. Because previously the European wines and especially the French wines, they were the dominating, and California just wasn't taken very seriously until this, and this was in 1972.
Actually 76. It was a 1972. It was a 72 vintage wine that won, but it was 1976.
That's where I got hung up. But in the 70s, for sure.
But nearly 50 years ago now. I mean, we're coming up almost 50 years, 47 years.
It seems somewhat not too old considering the history of French wine.
Right.
We are still newer to the market, and hence, California was not taken seriously.
It is very seriously taken now.
It is,
and there are
absolutely.
people who will only drink Napa wines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but the question is, I know if you've watched movies, Sideways and others, these characters kind of going winery to winery, tasting wines, casually driving from one to the other. Is that what it's really like?
Well, it has changed in the time that we're going, because we're going post-COVID. So the wineries are just up and down the road. You're just driving past them constantly. So they are everywhere. But they're no longer, you can't just walk in and do a tasting. So it was a different kind of experience, and I had been a little bit forewarned, but I didn't make as many reservations ahead of time, or well enough ahead of time. And that's what's required now. They've just changed the structure post-COVID of how
right.
they do
It's
things.
no longer sort of a casual show up, try some wine, go to the next one. It's first of all, it's very expensive. Mm-hmm. You have to make the reservations well ahead of time. At least some of them, at least a week or more ahead of time.
Yeah, some of them are very sought after, and they vary in their pricing, but it is a reservation and tasting pricing. So they're going to do a formal tasting, and they have different levels of that. If you wanted to get even more expensive, they might tour the estate, and they would have only once a month. I think one of them had only once a month that they offered that one. So it does kind of vary, and we were just looking for tastings. We just wanted to go experience the winery.
Right, and it's very, so in Virginia, if you're familiar with Virginia wineries, you do just kind of casually show up, and for $20 or so, they'll taste their flight of wines, whatever 5 or 6 wines they're tasting. Right. And but in Napa, you make the reservation. Some of those reservations are $75, $80 or even more for a tasting. You're tasting wines that are retailing for $80, $90. Some of the wines we were tasting were well over $300, $400.
They were, wines. And it's just kind of increased. So I was finding the average tasting cost to be about $60. But then again, some of the ones I really was excited to go to were a little bit more than that. And by the time I got to it, I was too late to get that reservation because they were booking too far out for me. So, and we had been to overseas in the European country, Portugal. I definitely remember when we sought out wines over there, I was able to make reservations like a 24-hour notice and get a reservation.
In some cases, as we're on the way to the winery, hey, we're coming over.
Yeah, but they were very accommodating, even though they required reservations. It wasn't on the level of Napa, and Napa is just so, I believe, sought after.
Sought after. The other thing too is that to understand the population of California is massive, and so we were talking to one of the tasting rooms that we were at, and the lady was saying that one weekend they had something like 10,000 people.
10,000
they have
people
busloads of people show up on the weekend from San Francisco and San Jose and other places, and just descend upon these wineries.
And that's a really good description, because they were saying there was no prep for it, there was no warning, and you really, as a business, trying to function on that level.
Yeah, trying to do tastings for 10,000 people with a staff of 3 is
it's
intimidating.
Yeah.
And so that's been that, and then COVID, when they had to be much more respectful of space and time and how many people were there. Those rules sort of carried over, and they use that to control, because they don't have, just like everywhere else, they're looking for staff. They're having a hard time staffing, and so if you go to Napa, don't expect it to be like one of those movies from the mid-2000s where people just casually show up and drink wine. So that's not going to happen.
It is different, and for good reasons. Also, you can't, as a business, they've had a little bit of a shortage, or they've had some difficulties also just from fires and things. They don't have.
Sure.
They've missed
the 2020 fires, for example. If you go out there, if you look for Napa wine, it's very difficult to find vintage year 2020, particularly Cabernets, because the way the fire that swept through that valley, right?
That is Napa,
and
yes,
and particularly because Cabernets stay on the vines longer, and to get those fruity flavors that they love in California, they were not. Most of the harvest was not done before the fire struck. Now, some of the other varieties that they have in Napa, like the Zinfandels and some of the others, were harvested in time before the fires.
A little bit sooner, yes.
Yeah.
And you have also the ones that were right in the path, and that was more up where we were started out in Calistoga area, up on Spring Mountain, some of those areas, and we had the opportunity to do a little bit of hiking around there, and it was fascinating seeing the char on these redwoods that are still standing, but the char, how far it was going up, and you just felt like you could visualize this raging fire.
Yeah, you can see the effects of the fire, 30, 40 feet in the air. And in the vineyard, some of the vineyards up on those hills really didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, and to that other point, though, that even the ones that were down on the valley floor, even those vineyards could suffer, though, from the smoke taint because of that coming through. So it was really rare to see anything 2020 there for a Cabernet.
Yeah, if you do happen to see a Cabernet from Napa from 2020, snatch it up, because it's
snatched up and make
probably
sure
going to be
it's
very,
good.
very good. No, make sure it's good. Probably going to be very good, because it was very, very limited. So
yeah, most of the vineyards, winemakers, if they tasted it and had smoke taint, they tossed it out. They are very quality focused. They're not going to put something out there that does not pass their test.
All right, so if you go to Napa, all of the big names are there, and we're going to show some bottles and some things that we discovered while we're there. But there's also other things to do in Napa.
Yes.
Up in Calistoga, what are they known for?
Oh, mud baths.
Mud baths.
Okay, sound a little strange, but Calistoga is like the national spot for the mud baths because they have something unique. They have the volcanic soils that they mix together with the hot spring minerals those combinations and get this incredible mud bath. So they have them everywhere in Calistoga.
Take your word for it.
Yeah.
And then there's something that's very popular, and we've seen it on TV shows and others that have been advertised. This is the wine train. What do you think about the wine train?
Yeah, that was a unique. We didn't take the option to do that, but that actually looked kind of fun to do because you're not the one having to drive and navigate. So going through somebody to make reservations for you and that has its perks. The train, and there's a Silverado Trail that had something going that I had,
Right, some tours.
Right, some tours. They do have designated wineries that they're going to stop for, and those wineries are prepared for that experience to be happening. So you don't have the freedom to select everything.
Right, you're not picking the wines. They're picking the wineries that you're going to go to. They're all good, though. And as it turns out, you'll probably drink Cabernet. Probably.
And you should.
All right. So what are some discoveries that we made while we were there in Napa?
So
I have a few bottles here.
I know. Well, we were up in Calistoga at the beginning, and that's where we had Storybook Mountain. I'm going to start with the Storybook
Mountain, okay.
Yeah. So I can show that.
A Storybook, yeah. So this is Storybook Mountain. I'm put that up there. They have some very interesting things they're doing with Zinfandel. Now, I am not a Zinfandel drinker. If you ask me, I would say, no, I really don't like it. I don't want to drink Zinfandel. And I was very impressed and surprised with their Zinfandel.
He enjoyed the Zinfandel.
Really like it. Brought some home.
Yeah, it was a little more sophisticated than we were expecting it to be. Nuanced between, because we tasted quite a few of them, and you were getting a difference in each one. It was not a one-note situation.
And they were one of the earlier vineyards in Napa. And the gentleman who started it, I guess it's the father, the woman who's running it now, was a university professor and took a very scientific approach to which grapes grew best in which parts of the vineyard, and experimented with it a lot. And a lot of the work that he did has been replicated by other vineyards in the region. I
loved the family story here. So this is definitely a family vineyard. And like he said, you've got somebody that's making a decision to risk and change his profession and go into this and brings his family with him. And his daughter was the one who gave us the tour, and she is a winemaker together with him there. So I loved the family story there.
I do too, and I think this is one of the things that needs to happen with American wines is that when you go to France or Italy or Germany or someplace, and you find the same families have been working the same vineyards for hundreds of years, and they've got that tradition. It's sort of in their blood. And in America, typically what happens is some rich guy starts a vineyard because he wants to see his name on a label or her name on a label, and when they get bored with it, they sell it, and there's a lot of turnover with American vineyards. And so where you start to get families setting roots in that second generation and hopefully third generation coming along, that's when I think the wines will go up even to another level beyond what they are, because you're going to get that family involvement, the people whose lives are involved in the wine. It's not just a project for them.
I agree. Absolutely.
All right, so that was one. What else did we discover?
Also in Calistoga area is where you have your first Judgment of Paris winner that we had to check out because...
Of course we did.
Of course we did. Of course we did. So that was Chateau Montelena.
Chateau Montelena, and I'll put that up here. Chateau Montelena is world famous because of the Judgment of Paris, right? They took this 1972 vintage Chardonnay over to Paris, and there was a blind taste testing, highly publicized.
Right.
And for the first time, California wines beat out French wines. And the wine that they did it with was their Chardonnay. There was a couple of others from the valley that also went along. But Chateau Montelena was really the one that...
I think their Chardonnay, that one that they start off with, I think that surprised you.
There was. I'm not a big Chardonnay. I'm not a big Zinfandel drinker. I'm not a big Chardonnay drinker.
So I start off with giving him things that are really not in his wheelhouse that he doesn't like, but
I really liked it enough to bring bottles home. So
we did, and I think we enjoyed one bottle while we were there. Like later on, and they don't have you hanging out just enjoying your bottle there. They didn't have the space for that, but they did have beautiful gardens we got to tour through.
Beautiful facility, beautiful gardens. As I like to say, wine only grows in beautiful places.
In beautiful places.
That's right. But they had a lot of other wines there that were considerably more pricey.
They were definitely. They had some elevated levels. It was simply that we were more wowed with the Chardonnay because it was different, and I love anything that's different.
Yeah, we weren't that wowed with the Cabernet. Now, excellent Cabernet.
No,
don't
it
get me
was
wrong,
excellent.
but it wasn't so much more wow than everything
It
else.
didn't stand out in the same way that the Chardonnay did.
Chardonnay really stood out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what else did we discover while we were there?
Okay. Well, we also discovered, we went down
Into the valley.
into the valley. We went a lot of different places, but into the valley, one of the things I liked was the store shops when we were walking through Napa.
Yep.
And you could just kind of go into that without having a reservation.
Right. And try wines from different wineries all at one place.
Yes.
That was nice.
So that was the kind of experience to do with that one. So I was surprised by this one.
Yeah, this one, we got this. It was a combination jewelry store and wine tasting room
And we're
in
thinking,
the city of Napa.
all right, why not?
Yeah, and so it's
Pottas?
Pottas, maybe.
Pottas?
I don't know if you could
How do
read
you say
that.
it? I've never heard of it before, and so we kind of went in there and went for it.
And it's a red blend. This one is a 2015. Was really delightful and surprising.
Yes, it was. We thoroughly enjoyed it, and of course, we're just going to go in and sit down and have a glass. We did end up buying the bottle because we thought it was wonderful.
We drank that, and then we bought another bottle to bring home because
We did.
right?
And they did tell us that they have a lot in Sonoma area, but what we were drinking was a Napa.
Was in Napa, and what was just sort of fun about this is what happens when you go on a wine vacation is you discover things you're not expecting. We had the big names that we all know
Right.
and are familiar with. It was neat to get surprised by something we had never even heard of.
Well, I'm having fun that he's letting me pick places because I look for the stuff that
Right.
many times I look for the ones you don't know. So another one that when we were in downtown Napa, another storefront we went to.
Yep, this is Lavendi, and this was another wonderful cab that we discovered while we were there. As it turns out, there's a lot of cab in Napa. As it turns out.
We had quite a few bottles that I liked from them, but I think this one won the day at the end that we really...
Yeah, the 2019 Cab Sauv.
Of course, I wonder if we'd had enough glasses at that time.
It's true. Yeah, it gets better with each glass.
Each glass is better and better. But the last one was the winner. So
okay, and then this one that we had a discussion over the correct pronunciation. You were trying to pronounce it French-wise.
yes, I was trying to say Peridou. But this one is because I actually like Duckhorn, and Duckhorn is the parent company, but I like Duckhorn Merlot. So we're in Napa. I wasn't really looking for Merlot specifically. I just have a good respect for Duckhorn. I could not get into some of them, and I see Peridou is how I was saying it.
Right.
We'll get into that in a minute. But I saw that and was reading the descriptions of that, and they had a reservation. Great, let's go do that one. So this was kind of a fun surprise and discovery for me.
This was. It's by the Duckhorn people. Same people make Duckhorn. It's pair of ducks. And
I was pronouncing it all wrong.
and sort of a trademark thing of the Duckhorn family of wines is the ducks theme. And this was a fun play on the word.
Duckhorn, decoy, paradox.
Right. Pair of ducks. And it was really wonderful wine. We really enjoyed it.
We did.
And this was on the floor of the valley. And it was about halfway between Calistoga and Napa. So,
Right. We're right off the Silverado Trail for this.
Right off Silverado Trail. And it was just a beautifully made wine. And all their wines were good.
They were.
We had to sort of pick one to bring, and so this is the one we got, but we liked all of them.
He let me go with my favorite on that one.
No,
So that means I'm going to hold it until I think it's a good enough occasion to open that one.
That one's going to sit a little bit.
That is.
All right, and then we had another big name one. We had to go. We had to go with a big name. Montelena was a big name.
Right. Well, and we go back to our Judgment of Paris. So now we're down on the valley floor and we're on Cabernet. So we're at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. There are two different Stag's Leap in Napa. So you'll notice this one, it's the singular stag, and it's wine cellars was how they differentiate themselves. And they had to go through a little battle there with a different Stag's Leap that is also in Napa. This one, though, we went and tasted all their Cabernets, and I asked to have kind of a sample. They had two different estates there. The Stag's Leap estate is the one that estate wine is the one that won the Judgment of Paris.
Yes, and one of the things that was really fabulous about a Stag's Leap was the price. It was fabulously expensive. I think at one point we were tasting a wine that was $640 or something a bottle, and this is one of those where I well, probably differ from you. I don't think it was worth it. I think it was a lot of hype. It was good wine. Don't get me wrong. It was good wine. Was it $640 good? No, I think that's the reputation, the Stag's Leap name.
I don't fully disagree with you. My problem is I self-doubt that my palate is able to differentiate between the $300 and the $600 bottle. But I also think there's great wines that are not priced at that level, that if you're blind tasting them, I'm not sure, I could taste a difference definitely in going up to about $100 bottle. If I'm tasting something that's more on my everyday
Sure.
$50 budget, maybe even, but Napa, a $50 bottle in Napa is a find.
$50 bottle of Napa is sort of like a $20 bottle of Virginia wine.
Yeah,
it
is kind of unicorn-like there, but I think I could taste the difference between that and the $130 bottle. But once we get up in those other ones, I'm getting subtle flavor differences. The quality, it's not hitting me as...
And here's what I felt like. If you're going to pour me a bottle of $80 bottle of wine, and I think, wow, this is good wine. It's very, and it should be for $80. That should be a top shelf wine.
Should be a great wine.
And then you're going to pour me one that's $300 or $600. I should be wowed. I should drink that wine and go, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I have to have a bottle of this. This is just an amazing wine. And it wasn't. It was like, yeah, I could taste a difference. But could I taste a quality difference? Could I taste that it was so much better? I just couldn't get there.
This is the personal thing too. Everybody's palate's going to be different. You're going to receive it different. We didn't justify or equate that dollar point they were telling us with it was a great wine, but it didn't match.
Certainly, the name is up there. Stag's Leap and their pedigree and their provenance with their wines is there. And if you're a collector and you want one of those bottles just because you want to have one of those bottles, is it something you're going to buy a case of to drink on a Saturday afternoon or with friends? Yeah. No, I don't think it's worth that.
So we had a great time, beautiful, and we highly recommend. Are there things that we should pass on to people to not do, or lessons learned?
Lessons learned. One, don't show up and expect to get in anywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Make your reservations ahead of time.
Yep. Make use of your off time with some of the other fantastic things they had. Just walking around Napa was a joy of itself. I walked into a couple wine shops and we enjoyed some restaurants and things. So,
and some of the outdoor activities, like the hiking, was amazing.
It was wonderful.
And so you don't have to, mud baths. There are a lot of things to do there besides just drinking wine. There's great food, there's great restaurants. Those you also need reservations for. You can't just show up and say, give me a table for two.
Biggest takeaway, planning. As with every vacation, we kind of scramble to get out of here. So I'm used to planning on the fly, which is on the plane at the hotel we land, and that did not play to my benefit. I should have been more ahead of it. So that's my advice.
Budget. It is going to be expensive. California just is expensive. If you rent a car, the rental car is going to cost more than it is anywhere else. The gasoline is going to cost more than anywhere else. All of the food that you buy is going to cost more than the hotels are going to be more expensive. The wineries are expensive. You know that. You can look that up ahead of time. But be prepared. It is a budget hit. That's why we suggest if you're not from Northern California, you're just going to cruise up for the afternoon. Good for you. You're lucky. But for the rest of us who have to fly in, you really need to. It's probably a once. You do this trip once and you talk about it. You take pictures and you enjoy it. But budget. You really
budget. Other thing, be kind to all of your winemakers and we heard all the stories out there. They're having hardships with fires, and they have got increased inflation and different costs out there. So we understand to some extent why some of those reservation prices need to be made. So just have some heart there and not think that they're trying to gouge you or anything.
They're suffering too.
They're suffering as well. And the other one that we don't have a bottle for that I just loved going to for the reason that it was budget friendly. This is Frank Family Farm. And we didn't bring the bottle back because we drank it right there. They had an option to reserve a picnic table and just get bottle service. So I went in, they let me taste a couple of things and choose a bottle, and they let us enjoy it with our own picnic.
Sit in the sunshine and
beautiful
snacks. Yeah, gorgeous place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's a lot of things to do, like I said, besides just buy expensive wines. But you are going to need to budget. You are going to need to prepare. and just expect everything's going to cost double what it costs anywhere else. I mean, we honestly, we could have gone to back to France or Portugal or Spain
Yep.
for about half of what we spent going to Napa. We've done it though. We had to go. It is the mecca of American wine.
Yes.
And so we had
And
to do it.
I still would say it's something that everybody should have the opportunity to do if you can.
All right.
All right.
So you notice that none of these bottles are open. What are we drinking today? I noticed that if you've got something over there, what I've got today that I'm having a glass of is this wonderful South African Pinotage. It's a Spear, and it's a lovely red from South Africa. Pinotage is it's a form of red blending that's not like Bordeaux style. It's not like Meritage, but it's a similar. It's a blend of red wines. This one is really nice and very drinkable. Love it. What have you got there?
What have I got here? I've got my Italian. All right, so this is Italian. Can you see that one? And we'll put the details up on this one. This one has a wonderful deep flavor to it. So again, they're all blends over in this area as well. But
That one's a little bit different because it's a Tuscan, but it's not Sangiovese.
No, it's not. Well, not everything comes across that way. So this one is definitely, they're sourcing grapes or using the grapes that are more familiar to us, but they're doing them in Italy. So you're getting that winemaker treatment to it, their style. I love this one.
All right.
It's deep and rich and wonderful.
Well, we each have a great wine, so let's end on that.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.